on recording this session so that we can share it with folks who weren't able to make it this evening. So welcome to our Navigating Online Sales webinar with the Becker family this evening. I'm Jessica Renane. I'm with the Hoosier Young Farmers Coalition, and I'll be your host for this evening and be helping getting people in the room as they get logged in. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that we say thank you to our partners, which is IU and Purdue. We could have done this without their help, and they're spreading the word and organizing and really pulling it all together, as well as the grant from SARE, which helped us really pull all the pieces in and get everybody to be involved. So those are our main partners in this program this evening, and so we wanted to thank them. As I said, we are recording this session, so I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. And we ask that you stay muted while the Beckers give their presentation. But then when we're done, we'll open it up for a Q&A, and we can ask questions and have a conversation and have a chat. And we'll hopefully have some good dialogue. So with that, I'm going to turn the conversation over to Kyle and Emily. Thanks so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you. So just in a nutshell, I'm Emily Becker, and I'm joining here with my husband, Kyle Becker. Originally, he was going to do most of the talking, but then we weren't sure the logistics of the day, and so you get us both. I thought it might be helpful just to give a little bit of background about what we do and what life looked like with online sales in particular before the March coronavirus situation hit, and then how that's played out the last several weeks since it's been going on. So in a nutshell, we represent a small scale diversified livestock farm. So we raise primarily beef, pork, we have broilers, laying hens, turkeys, and then our most recent addition would be a small herd share. And we are situated in Northeast Henry County. And our farm compromises about 98 acres with a little extra, I suppose, just under 100 acres, I suppose. And
98.6.
98.6, there you go. And we purchased the farm in 2007 and started mainly with just freezer beef, and then we expanded over the years to the items I just mentioned. Our primary sales channels over the years since we started going to farmers markets and such have been going from anywhere between 2 and 4 farmers markets during the year. And we do both summer season as well as winter season. Right now we're doing 2 markets during the summer just from a staffing standpoint. So we go to the Carmel Farmers Market and also the Fishers Farmers Market. And so that's one way that we get our product to folks. The other way would be through wholesale accounts. So some small scale restaurants, independent grocers. We also worked with an outfit that supplied to various college campuses here in our state, such as DePaul, Rose-Hulman, Wabash, and a few others. Butler. Mm-hmm. We also run a CSA, and we've done that for about 8 years, probably 6 or 8 years, somewhere in there. We normally have around 40 to 45 CSA members, and this season right now we're about to 75. Obviously, I attribute a lot of that to the coronavirus and people wanting to have a secure option for their meats. We also have some online platforms that we have worked with, which we'll focus on in this presentation, of course. So we have a website that we have had in place for about 3 years using Shopify. Before we used Shopify, we had a WordPress account, and I'll talk about why we switched to Shopify later on, but that was one way that we reached customers online. The other way, which has been around for us for 2 years, is Market Wagon, which is 2.5 years since we've been a part of it, somewhere around there. It all kind of blurs, but that is basically an online farmers market where vendors, there's probably 200 plus vendors on Market Wagon, and representing literally thousands of products. And so we've been a part of that, and we'll talk about that throughout as well. Our normal fulfillment schedule before the early March virus situation hit was that we would fulfill orders 1 day a week, which for us fell on Wednesdays because Market Wagon, which was our largest online sales, has a Thursday pickup. And so we had to do all of our freezer work on the farm on Wednesdays. So we would typically start around 1 o'clock in the afternoon and try to be done We jokingly say before midnight, but normally it would take us 6 to 7 hours, and that is using between 2 and 4 people, depending on who happened to be available that day. And at some points, we might have Kyle helping for a little bit to help pull product, but then he might have to transition off and go do some other chores around the farm or pick up meat or whatnot. So it would fluctuate between about 2 and 4 people over that 6 to 7 or so hour stretch. That has changed since the March start of all of this. So in the very, very early days, when the virus situation first started, we, like everyone else, had no idea what to expect, what our sales were going to look like. We just didn't know. We very quickly realized as restaurants were closing, as college campuses were closing, that our wholesale accounts, which, what percentage of our sales would you say that was?
About 70.
About 70%, Kyle says, before all this took place. We knew that 70% of our sales was going to take a pretty serious hit because of that. And, you know, at first there was a little bit of, oh, what are we going to do? But because we did have our sales, you know, not all in one basket, so to speak, we were able to realize that our online sales were going to help pick up the slack from our wholesale accounts, which definitely turned out to be the case so far. One of our farmers markets, once the coronavirus hit, they decided to just cancel from there on out. So we lost about, I think it was 7 or 8 weeks of that market season. Our other farmers market, they did decide to keep working through it. They made some modifications, of course, and they even extended their regular season. So rather than stopping mid-March when they would have stopped, every year they decided to keep going through the end of March and also added an April market. So that was kind of unique. And we were able to use our Shopify website to help get pre-orders, as we call them, together for those farmers markets. So we were thankful that those sales were able to take place. Let's see what else. Oh, so then once the virus situation hit, then we saw a pretty immediate and very drastic increase in our sales because people just did not know what to expect to find at the store. People were afraid to go to the stores. And so I think the idea of being able to order something online appealed to them, especially from a local farmer, because of all the things they were also seeing about what was happening on the commodity and commercial side of things. And in fact, on our Shopify account, which I mentioned we've had in place for about 3 years, before the virus situation, I would say we would have had, it would vary, but what, 10, well, between 5 and 10, let's say, pre-orders per week. And that was just great for customers who knew what they wanted to make sure that when they came to the farmer's market, we would have the items they were looking for. That first week, it literally went through the roof. And at first we thought, okay, we can manage this. But then when it came time to deliver those orders, it became very apparent that that was not something that we had the resources in place to actually deliver upon efficiently. I think Kyle made, I don't know what, 15 or 20 stops, 27 stops the first week, and it literally took him all day. And I should point out that when we had our Shopify account, we would kind of promote our home delivery as being in the Indianapolis area, so in the I-465 loop, as well as to the surrounding communities, which we considered Zionsville, Fishers, Carmel, Noblesville, that sort of thing, and Westfield. So even though all of these orders were in that geographical area, because of how spread out those areas are, it was making a stop like every 20 to 40 minutes. And so it just was not efficient at all. And so what we ended up doing was suspending our Shopify sales until we could get a better handle on how we would be able to fill those orders in a reasonable time frame. And so that's when we really decided to focus on our Market Wagon sales, because the beauty of that system is that they have drivers and they plan the route, and they handle all of the logistics on getting the product to the customer once we got it to them. And so that's what we have chosen to stick with, because our sales to there have remained steady. So one of the things it was asking about, the things that we have made changes about or things that we've been challenged by during this time is that because Market Wagon sales went up substantially as well, they added a second fulfillment day. So instead of originally picking up orders or delivering orders to people's homes just on Thursdays, they moved to a Tuesday, Thursday format, which meant on our end, we had to add a Monday work day in our freezer in addition to the Wednesday that we already had been working. And so as you can imagine, adding a second fulfillment day for a small farm like us, it added some challenges from a staffing standpoint. Not only did we have to figure out who was going to be available to work the extra day, but also like in the freezer itself, but then we have 4 young kids, 2, 4, 6, and 8. And so we had to line up extra childcare. The days were also longer. I think the first couple of weeks when the virus situation hit, it wasn't unusual for us to be trying to fill orders for 12 hours. And so it literally doubled our time even with having more people. And so we quickly realized, okay, we're going to have to make some changes in how we're doing these orders because we can't be out here till midnight every night when we're doing this. And so Kyle, who does a lot of driving for his day, both on the farm as well as on the vet side of things, listens to a lot of podcasts and kind of was getting his wheels turning about how we could revamp our garage space. And I'll show some pictures of that in a minute because that's where we fulfill out of. We have a walk-in freezer, and what we had in place was working fine for the amount of orders we were doing. It wasn't great, but it wasn't an impossible feat to get orders filled. It might not have been the most convenient, but we were able to work with it. But once we started seeing our orders increase so much, that's when we realized, okay, to cut down on the time that we were out here, just getting a more efficient layout would be huge. So we added a staff member, and between his organizational skills and just clearing out some of the clutter that was in the garage and taking up a valuable workspace, we were able to revamp it to make the flow work a lot better. And so Kyle had seen, I think, some fulfillment options where they work in a circular format, and that really helped to speed things up. So we're done with those being out there till midnight nights, and now we're getting closer back to that 5 to 7 hour time frame, even though our orders are 10 times what they were prior to the coronavirus hitting. Some of the challenges that we have faced with this is because we raise livestock, we book our processing dates oftentimes a year or more out. And so trying to add in extra dates to accommodate the extra demand was challenging. But we've been able to mostly work through that, and Kyle can speak more to that since he works with the processors more so than I do. And then once you take in extra animals for processing, then there's all sorts of related logistics to that, such as, okay, we need to add an extra day to sort and haul the animals to processing. Then we have to get that meat home. We have to make sure we're going to have storage for it. Our walk-in freezer that we have, what's the dimensions? 9 by 12 or something?
No.
What's our?
It's 12 by 16 by 9.
12 by 16 by 9. There we go. So we have to be able to fit in all this extra product. We also have the use of a refrigerated box truck that we can use. But storage was certainly a concern when we're talking about dealing with all the meat that would be coming home. And then just the behind the scenes things. So like the fulfillment paperwork. Before the virus situation hit, I would hand write out our order tags for Market Wagon, which on a normal week would be take me about an hour by the time I got everything done. We had been asking about having a label option within their pick ticket system, and we are so thankful that they were able to get that in place, because there would be no way that we would have been able to handwrite out all of the orders on that. And I'll show you what our pull chart looks like as well. So just all the paperwork, and then the actual fulfillment itself, and then the delivery and the placement, and then all of the behind the scenes organization and cleanup. So it just added a whole new layer of extra work that we had to figure out how to do. Also managing the online sales platforms. Kyle handles pretty much all of the Market Wagon online sales. And so having to go in there and make sure inventories are up to date, or adding what the specials are going to be for that week. It just takes extra time. And then I handle it mostly on our Shopify platform, and I don't do as good of a job of keeping that up to date. But again, we have a fraction of the orders on that site as we do through Market Wagon. So that took time. And certainly the burnout factor. We already work a lot of hours on a farm, as any of the other farmers on here know. And so when we were adding that much to our work day, it was definitely some burnout, and just trying to figure out how to keep our morale up and not be snippy with each other and our kids, and trying to maintain some sense of positivity and morale through all of this. And then I'll let Kyle talk about just dealing with the differences in an online customer versus a customer that we would interact with at the farmer's market. There were definitely some differences there. And then one of the main things with online sales that I have found, and it kind of speaks to what he's getting ready to talk about, but you lose that in the moment time with your customer for them to be able to ask questions, see a product, because inevitably a customer will order something online thinking it's going to be one thing, thinking it's going to become packaged a certain way, and then they get it, and even though it's what they ordered, it's not what they thought they were ordering sometimes. And so you're having to deal with the how to make the best of that situation so that they're not unhappy, and also so that we're not losing credit for the sale on Market Wagon, for example. There's kind of the situation can arise for the he said, she said. So for example, if we know that we filled an order on farm and we know that the product went to the fulfillment site, but then the customer says, I never received it. And so that can create some challenges. Whereas if you're at the farmer's market, for example, you're very clearly handing off the product to the customer. They can see it, you can see it, everyone goes on about their day. But when you're dealing with online sales, you can definitely have that missing item issue. Also, now that the weather's warming up, trying to figure out, if a customer is not home when we make a home delivery order, are they going to have a cooler out? Are they going to be there when we deliver it? Just thinking about temperatures and food safety and all that, it adds a whole nother layer. We had some folks last week, I think it was a Market Wagon, they were upset that some of their product had started to fall because of all the extra orders that they're having. By the time the product gets to the customer, it might start to thaw a little bit. So again, some of those things you have to think about how do you rectify that? How do you make the best of it? So do you want to talk about the online customers that you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest differences is that online customers tend to be coming from kind of like a grocery store background. And of course, the grocery store has done a fantastic job of, all the packaging being the same. All that retail packaging is, usually very high end. And sometimes, the way our processors cut, different cuts of meat, or the way they package it, or the way they label it can be totally different than what you might get, from Walmart or Meijer or Target. And so, these people are shopping with a lot of anxiety because they're just kind of freaking out. Like our lives, have actually sped up, but there's a lot of people that, their lives have completely come to a halt. And so they're, very anxious about their futures. And so I think some of it is just they're shopping just with so much anxiety that, they're getting something that they're unfamiliar with. And so it kind of becomes a very stressful situation. Mm-hmm. So trying to mitigate that stress and kind of, explain through it can add extra time to your day.
Mm-hmm. Answer a lot of emails, phone calls.
I mean, just the massive amount of emails. There was a Friday, I don't remember, it's probably been 4 weeks ago now, but all the Indianapolis TV stations had a morning report about the giant meat shortage that is coming. And so my phone was blowing up. I mean, I had people just calling me having like panic attacks wanting to order a quarter of beef. or something. And I'm like, this is, not a decision that you want to make in a moment of,
Crisis.
of crisis and anxiety. I mean, if you're going to order a quarter of beef, you're going to want to think about it a little bit, plus, they don't just grow on trees. I got to get, the beef to the processor, and we got to get it aged and hung and cut the way you want and get it back to you. And so while we can do all of that,
it's not going to happen tomorrow.
It's not going to happen.
6 weeks out.
Exactly.
Or if not more.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and, I mean, we've been filling, pork orders in 2 to 4 weeks and beef in 4 to 6 weeks, and then all the other sales. And nobody's going hungry. They're all going to be fine. They're all going to get their product. But there was for sure a lot of shopping with anxiety online. I mean, we had customers that would order, and then we get an email 2 hours later from their husband canceling the order because, she's shopping with a lot of anxiety, and then he doesn't understand why she's, buying so much.
Right.
So
I thought what I might do too, I remembered of showing a few screenshots of what it looks like for our online sales. So let me, do you know if I'm able to do that, to share the screen there, Jessica? I was working through.
Is there a share screen option for you at the bottom?
There is, but it says the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay. I worked through it with Amy earlier, so I know how to do it.
So I've made you the host now, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. So go to that. And then go to PowerPoint. And then go to presenter view. Okay. So I don't know if you can see that or not. Hopefully we did that right. This just gives you what we see when we log
the back door of Market
the back door of Market Wagon, which I said is our main online sales option that we use. So this is where we go in and manage our products, where we put our inventory, where we put our price, where we put if we're going to have a promotion on that product and so forth. And we have, because of all the different species of meat that we raise, I haven't counted recently, but we probably 65. We have 65 different cuts on Market Wagon. Okay. Kyle says we have 65 different cuts on Market Wagon. Altogether, we had close to 90 there.
At one time, we had 107 different
So we've
items.
tried to pare it down. So as you can imagine, that's why I was talking about how it can take some time to manage all of that. So that's what we see. And then the next slide, this is what the customer will see. And so one of the good things about Market Wagon is it is a very nice, user-friendly website for the most part. And so
this is my favorite product right here.
Kyle really likes our sausage.
We have now hit 20 5-star reviews. My SPS, my sugar-free breakfast sausage, has never not gotten a 5-star review.
I'm sure it will now, but
so tonight, yes, I'll get my very first one.
So that's what the customer sees.
Knock on wood.
And then the other site that we use for online store, this is what our website looks like. Again, very basic. And we chose not to put pictures on ours just because working with frozen meat, we've struggled over the years of what kind of picture do you put? Nobody wants to really look at frozen meat, and then trying to cook everything that we offer and make it look presentable is sometimes a challenge too. So that's why there's no nice pictures on this one at the moment. And then one thing someday. Someday. One thing I wanted to touch on with Shopify, if there's anybody that's viewing this that is curious about if Shopify is a good option or not for their sales, is overall we've really enjoyed it. It's user friendly. I am not super techie, nor is Kyle, and so we wanted something that would be pretty much a plug and chug. I didn't want to have to do too much to it, but because we sell meat, which is a variable weight option, meaning that not every single package of meat is going to weigh identical as if we were selling, let's say, a bar of soap or maybe a jar of honey or some of the other things that some other producers might be making. So we have opted to go with a deposit format as far as collecting payment on the front end. And so that's why you'll see the word deposit after each entry and why it's saying just $5. That can sometimes be confusing to customers, but it seemingly is a good enough fit for right now. There are some pretty slick websites out there. Grace Cart is one of them. Someday, yes. We don't have the volume of sales right now to really invest in that, but it does allow you to work with variable weight options. So if you are selling meat or something else where each package is going to be a little bit different, just keep that in mind, that you need to figure out how you're going to work with that if you're collecting payment online. We did want to have some sort of a deposit in place just to make sure that the customer would honor their order and not just abandon it. And so we do that. So this is what the customer sees. Let me see what my next slide is. Okay, this is what we use for paperwork. So we have what we call a pull chart, and which we do in Excel. The green at the top are just our abbreviations for where the different items are going to go. So when we do our freezer fulfillment work, the first column is what we need for the Carmel Farmers Market, then the Fisher's Farmers Market, what we need for our CSA. The MW is our market wagon, and then where we have the bulk at the top, that's basically any other online sales, also a true bulk order, which we consider to be like a quarter beef, half hog, that sort of things. We sell that as well. And so we look at our pick tickets that we get from Market Wagon, and we have our separate CSA chart, which we look at all the different things that we need that particular week. It goes on the chart. We put in the weights if we have to keep weights in mind, because Market Wagon, we price things based on a certain weight. And that way, when whoever is doing the fulfillment, because it's generally Kyle are out there, but a lot of times one or both of us have to be in and out. So we might have staff members out there. And this is just kind of a one-stop shop where they can look to see what is needed, the quantity, the weights needed, and where it's going. And so I'll show you the next slide of kind of how we've revamped the garage layout when we fill orders. But basically, we set up coolers all around the perimeter of the garage on tables. And we've had to buy a lot more coolers, let me say that, and a few extra tables too to make this happen. But then as we pull items out of the walk-in, when we go to rump roast, for example, we might see that we need 2 at Carmel or 10 at Fisher's or whatnot, or 20 for Market Wagon. Then we look at what we overall need, and that goes in a designated rump roast cooler. And so it's kind of laid out all around the perimeter of the room, and that way when it comes time to fulfillment, we know where it needs to be diverted to. So here's a quick glimpse of our garage. It's not perfectly set up. This is our coolers after we're done, but we put up a couple of more tables, spread them out just a little bit, and then we line up, I don't know, 30 or so coolers probably, and they're all labeled with what goes in that particular cooler, and we do the same layout each week. We just put those tags on the cooler. That way we have some consistency, and we know, okay, the rump roast go in the very first cooler, or chicken might be, you know, the 12th cooler over, but again, it's got a tag and it says which chicken cuts are in that cooler. And that way when we're filling orders, typically we do that for Market Wagon, where we have somebody labeling the bags. I guess the first part would be me calling out what we need for that order, the runner going to whichever coolers are needed, getting those items, me putting them in the bag along with that runner. I tie the bag, and then we have a person that labels it and puts it in the finished product cooler. So it's kind of a whole setup, and but it is getting much more efficient. I think that might be my last slide. Yes, okay. So let me switch back over to here. Okay, so that's kind of in a nutshell how things have changed for us. Basically just trying to figure out how to increase efficiency so that we can deal with the increased sales that we've been seeing. Jessica, do you have any other things you want us to touch on, or do we want to open up for Q&A, or?
I think, well, first of all, thank you for your presentation. That was really amazing and informative. And I think now if we want to open it up to folks that are on the line for questions.
Okay.
You can just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Great.
While people are thinking of their questions, I actually have one to get us started.
Sure.
You had mentioned earlier that your CSA has basically doubled since this started. Do you know where those new folks came from? Were there people that knew you at the market, or were they friends of people who are already?
That's a good question. It's kind of a mixture. I would say we definitely have some of our former CSA members who have come back. And so the way we do our CSAs, we do 2 6-month seasons, which correspond with the outdoor farmers market season and the winter farmers market season. So we do a May to October, and then we do a November to April. And so many people, once they've joined our CSA, they stick with it year after year, but we have people who will sit out a season or more. And so I have seen some of the people who have been sitting out, they've hopped back in. So that's been one way that we've gotten some of the customers this particular round. Others have been friends or neighbors or coworkers of current CSA members, where they'll say, hey, my neighbor is a part of your CSA. They really enjoy it. I was talking to them about it, and now I'm interested. And so we've had, oh golly, probably 8 or 10 via that route. And then we have people who have just moved to the area, don't know us, but they somehow found us and knew that we offered a CSA, and so they've hopped in. Those would be the most likely ones, I think. Mm-hmm. And from the farmers market too. So we have, that's one of the things that we love about the farmers market, is that you get to know your customers so well, of course. And so when you see your regulars week after week, you know, I'm a mom, I'm trying to be resourceful. So a lot of times I will say to them, hey, you really ought to consider our CSA, because it's going to allow you to save money on the things that you're already buying. And so once I explain it to them, they say, yeah, I should do that. So we've had some of our regular market customers that instead of just buying what they want on the spot week to week, they go ahead and commit to our CSA. And I should point out too, with our CSA, we do 3 preset bundles that I come up with each season. And then we always have the option for them to customize their own bundle. So that way they're getting the cuts and quantities that make sense for them and their family and the meals that they typically consume. So that, I think, is appealing to most folks. That way it allows them to get what they want. But we do have some folks who, you know, they can figure out what to do with the preset bundles that I've come up with. I try to make them varied enough that where, you know, it's got a lot of the staple items in there that people are used to working with. So some people like to just pick an option I have and go with that. So you see it on both ways. Is there anything I missed earlier that you wanted to touch on?
You did good.
Did we cover the things that you were wanting us to cover, or should we touch on anything that maybe was unclear, or that people want to know more about the behind the scenes of a Shopify or a Market Wagon or any of that?
Have you had any experience with any of the tech support that Shopify offer? Do they offer any tech support for helping people utilize their?
Yeah, they do. And in fact, I did have to talk with them. I think it was when we were first converting over from WordPress, because again, I'm not super techy. And so there were some things that I thought, ooh, I really want to know how to do this in Shopify, but I'm just not getting it. And so I did use their customer support, and it was helpful. So, and in fact, I need to touch base with them again on something, because we keep getting these, I don't know if it's a spam email or a legitimate email from them saying they can't make deposits to our account, which would be a pretty big deal. And so I need to know, is this really coming from Shopify, or is this somebody just wanting our accounting numbers so that money can then go to their account?
They make deposits every day, yeah. So I'm pretty confident they know how to.
They are responsive, and if you touch base with their customer support, so that's been helpful. Mm-hmm.
Have you seen changes in your farmers markets? Have your farmers markets started for the year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Kyle goes to the Carmel Farmers Market. That's the one that he's at. And it's been double what it normally is, if not more. It's been super busy. And that is the one that normally ends in a normal year, mid-March. They are the ones that continue to go through the month of March, and even did an April market, which was, like I said, that's never happened before. And so I think
those were good markets.
And those were good markets. Yeah, so I think that continuity of not having that break helped things, as well as, again, people were wanting to know what they were buying, where it was coming from. And there was fewer contact. Store shelves were empty. And then there's a lot less contact, if that was an issue for them, with buying their items at a farmer's market than at a grocery store, of all the hands that touch it and that sort of thing. Fisher's market that I go to, it decided to do a online market as well during the month of May. The first week of their online sales for us, we're actually the first 2 weeks were pretty strong. Week 3 was a definite decline. And then this is our 4th week of it, and it's very small. I think because last week they did decide to go ahead and open the outdoor market, which they originally weren't going to start once the virus situation hit until the first Saturday in June. But they decided to open it 2 weeks early for a variety of reasons. I think they realized how tricky, how demanding all the logistics of running an online sales can be, because they were doing everything by last name rather than numerical. So they were having to alphabetize bags, and they even capped their orders, I think, at 400, and they went ahead and bumped it to 500. But as you can imagine, having an alphabetical system in place is very different than having a numerical system in place. So they have never done an online market before, so they had some growing pains there. I mean, they did a fine job, don't get me wrong, but they realized, wow, that's a lot of work. And so I think they were trying, as soon as they got the green light from whoever oversees them, the city of Fishers, they decided, hey, let's go ahead and try to get outside. That way we can try to move some of the online sales to maybe more in-person sales. So that market opened this past Saturday, and I didn't know what to expect, certainly since it was Memorial Day weekend and I took a helper with me, but it was pretty minimal. I mean, our coolers came back lighter, but it was definitely not the flood of people that Kyle has seen at Carmel. And I'm sure we're
breaking records every week.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a variety of reasons that lead into that. But now that the farmers markets are open, we know that our drastic increase in sales is going to start the decline at some point. We don't know when, but at some point, as people get back to some sense of normalcy in their life. But ideally, we'd love to hang on to as many of those online shoppers that found us during this time as we can. It's just trying to, figure out how to do that.
One kind of thing that I had noticed here most definitely last year is that a lot of our really regular customers were taking huge vacations. The economy was cranking in 18 and 19, and I think people had money and people were getting raises, and so they were taking vacations, in their new camper out west, and they were going to Hawaii for 2 weeks. And so we actually saw a decline in sales in the summer of 19. Yeah. And so I kept saying, kind of jokingly, we need some stress in this economy to bring customers back, because they're getting way too comfortable. And in February, we were even talking with our Edward Jones person that has a little bit of our retirement. And I told her, I'm like, we need some stress in the economy to bring customers back and to help our expansion. And I got my wish.
Just not in the way that anyone would have expected.
Not how I would have expected it. But yeah, nothing like drinking out of a fire hose.
Yeah.
So
now those people, of course, who aren't using their disposable income on the trips and
they are grilling steaks in their new backyard.
Yeah. So we've seen, with people being home more, of course, they're cooking more like everybody is. And so that's led to an increase in our sales. But who knows how long it'll continue, though.
Other questions?
Well, I think if nobody has any additional questions, that I want to thank you guys again for your time this evening and sharing your story with us. Congratulations and good luck with all the uptick in the sales, and hopefully it continues to just smooth out and keep those customers, as you said, as things get back to some sense of normalcy. I think a lot of people are still going to shop online now that they've discovered it's possible. So we wish you all the luck in keeping those customers moving forward for sure. So
thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.